Welcome to the Bowels of Retribution. In the late 80s, early 90s, Morrisound Studios over in Tampa, Florida was hailed by many as the mecca for any death metal band wanting to record an album. And I'm going to show you the 10 best death metal albums recorded at that iconic studio. Hello everybody. So, if you're a fan of death metal, undoubtedly you'll have heard of Morrisound Studios over in Tampa Bay, Florida. Owned and run by Jim and Tom Morris. Founded around 81 I do believe. And made famous for being, I suppose, what some people would call the pioneers of getting that death metal sound. Scott Burns, a young producer working at that studio, and I know Tom Morris, Jim Morris and Scott Burns looked at how they could get that sort of drum sound to cut through with that barrage of distorted guitars and just that full-on sound, and those guys kind of nailed it. So all of the extreme metal bands from the late 80s and 90s, I say all, but not all, they all sort of gravitated towards a studio. And with it being in Florida, you know, there was a lot of bands coming through in Florida, and it kind of became the birthplace, I suppose, for death metal, that death metal scene especially. So, in this video, I'm going to show you my 10 favourite albums that were recorded at that studio, an iconic studio. And I was very lucky back in 2015, I think it was, to have a holiday over in Florida, and I managed to make the pilgrimage to Temple Terrace, where the original site was of Morrisound Studios. It has since moved, so that was a nice moment for me, because, you know, getting into some of these albums that I'm going to show you as young as 16, 17 years old, it was a nice thing to do. So yes, I'm going to show you my 10 favourite albums recorded at that studio. What I've wanted to do as well, and I've kind of set a little mission for myself, was to pick 10 albums by 10 different bands. Because if I'm honest, if I wouldn't have done that, then quite possibly the likes of Death and Morbid Angel and maybe even Obituary would have had more than 1, 2, 3 albums maybe in this list. So I wanted to pick 10 different albums by 10 different bands. I'm going to give a couple of I'm going to give some honourable mentions to 3 albums. There is one playing in the background which I'll show you at the end that didn't quite make it, but the huge albums for me and albums that I love. So the first honourable mention is Cancer, Death Shall Rise, from the UK, their second release from 1991, and this featured James Murphy, somewhat of a Floridian legend in the death metal scene. He joined the band and added so much more to this album than they had on To the Gory End. But a fabulous, fabulous record, and I just wanted to give it a little mention. Didn't quite make the top 10, but it's worthy of mention. The second I'm going to show you is Atrocity, their album Hallucination from 1990. This is a bootleg. This is the only copy I have. I would love to get a copy of this on vinyl or OG CD. But technical death metal from Germany, originally put out on Nuclear Blast Records, but a fabulous, fabulous record, and the drummer from Enchantment back in the day was so into this album. I couldn't avoid it even if I wanted to. But yeah, another one worth a mention. And 2 bands from outside of Florida who were coming over to Morrisound Studios because the name dictated that they do that. You know, it was like I said earlier, you know, it was the mecca for for death metal bands and bands wanting to get the best kind of production they could. Okay, like I say, there's another honourable mention there, but I will show that at the end. So let's get on with it. My top 10, coming in at number 10, is the fantastic Atheist, their debut Piece of Time from 1990, featuring you know, a legend who was lost too early, Roger Patterson on bass. Fantastic technical death metal. I know some people say it leans a little bit towards thrash, and I won't argue with that. There's a lot of thrashiness about it, but for me, it's a death metal album, and it's a fabulous death metal album. And rightly so, Atheist would visit Morrisound Studios because the musicianship on this needs to be heard. You don't want any mishmash of sounds when you're playing a style of death metal like Atheist were. My number 10, Piece of Time by Atheist. Next, we have got a bit of vinyl to show you, and this is a band from the UK. I'll take that out of there. And this is Napalm Death with Harmony Corruption from 1990. Their third full length and the first with a new lineup and more of a death metal sound than previous. This is their death metal album, isn't it? It's just a fantastic album. An absolute riff fest. And as with all of these albums, really iconic albums for me growing up. You know, there was no way I could avoid or want to avoid any of these in my youth. Such brilliant albums. Mental, I was going to say Mental Funeral. Harmony Corruption by Napalm Death, my number 9. Let's put that there. What have I got next? We have got, originally from Buffalo, but relocated to Florida because of the scene that was going on. Cannibal Corpse, Eaten Back to Life, their debut from 1990. Just a angry, gory, aggressive death metal album. Just absolutely brilliant. This blew my head off when I first heard it, and Chris Barnes' vocals and the lyrical content. Me and my friends could not get enough of it. Absolutely brilliant. Cannibal Corpse, Eaten Back to Life, coming in at number 8. Let me put these CDs somewhere safe so I'm not going to knock them over. Right, next, and I've got some cassettes there, I want to put them somewhere safe. Number 7, we have got the mighty Demolition Hammer from 1991, their debut, Tortured Existence. Again, a bit like with Atheist, you could argue they've got a bit of a thrash sound, you know, and the death thrash, if that's what you want to call it. I'm not going to argue with that, but it's a death metal album for me, especially when I'm making this list anyway. But this is fantastic. This is furious, face-melting death metal. An absolute fantastic record. I was lucky enough to see these guys play live around the time they released this album. They were so aggressive, so full on stage, just absolutely brilliant. That's Demolition Hammer with Tortured Existence, my number 7. Next, we have got an iconic album, an album cover. Massacre from Beyond, 1991, featuring 3 of the members at the time from Death, and Cam Lee on vocals. Cam Lee was a big part of the Floridian scene back then. Released on Earache Records, an absolute fantastic album and a very influential album to me and the boys in Enchantment, especially our early days, getting to grips with our instruments and playing live. We covered a couple of songs off this album. I've spoken about that in the past, but just a superb, pummeling, riffy death metal. Just absolutely fantastic, and Cam Lee's vocals were just superb. Really, really good album. I haven't got enough superlatives for any of these albums I'm going to show you, really. Massacre coming in at number 6. Next we have got Altars of Madness, Morbid Angel from '89, their debut, again on Ear 8 Records. What can we say about this record? Really, just at the time, probably one of the most evil sounding death metal records you could ever hear. You know, and the years these were coming out, 88, 89, 90, really death metal was growing, it was developing. And you know, when you were a thrash metal fan like I was, you didn't actually know it was called death metal really back then. You know, it was only as it came along, but just one of the most evil sounding records you could imagine to hear back in the day. Just absolutely groundbreaking. Fabulous, fabulous record. Morbid Angel, Altars of Madness, my number 5. Next we have got another tape to show you. Where did that go? And at number 4 we have got Terrorizer, World Downfall, grindcore, death metal, death grind, whatever you want to call it, featuring Jesse, who went on to be in Napalm Death, and Pete and David from Morbid Angel. Just a unbelievable record, unbelievable, so furious, and the riffs in this, they've got the drumming, just an iconic record. And again, you know, that beauty of Morrisound Studios. I mean, I do believe Dave Vincent produced this and Scott Burns mastered or engineered it, but that skill to get everything in there so you could hear everything when you're playing at the speeds that these guys were, just fantastic. Terrorizer, World Downfall, my number 4. Number 3, and probably the first death metal album that I heard back in 1988, and it scared the shit out of me. The album cover, Chuck's vocals. You know, I said at the beginning I could have put in numerous death albums, but I had to put this one in there because it was the first death album that I heard. Picture disc version of this, I'm going to get it out so you can see the back of it. But yeah, just like I say, just absolutely blew my head off when I heard this. Chuck's vocals were just like nothing I had heard before at that time. You know, and I suppose you can look back at this and you think about Death style, and the riffing on this was so simplistic compared to later Death albums, but at that time it wasn't. It was fantastic. It held your attention. It held a groove. It held this heaviness that you didn't quite get with thrash because of those sort of preciseness, the precision. I like to say preciseness for some strange reason. The precision of that riffing. This was a little bit different, but iconic album, and again, album cover. My number 3, Death and Leprosy, coming in at number 2. Oh, it was hard to do this list, if I'm honest with you, really, to narrow them down, but coming at number 2 we have got the debut from Deicide. And again, a bit like with Leprosy, when I first heard this just upped that level of evilness and malevolence. From 1990, Glenn Benton and the Hoffman brothers, Steve Ashim on the drums, not only was it blasphemous, not only was it evil, but it was just pummeling and relentless and in your face. And never had I heard a death metal album at that time with so many little moments and memorable moments, whether it was the way Glenn Benton sang certain lyrics, you know, I wouldn't say choruses, I'm not going to say choruses because you wouldn't call it that, but you know, and even just the drums and the guitars, the solos, all the little bits that were in there, just an unbelievably good album. My number 2, Deicide's self-titled debut, and coming at number 1, and it might be no surprise to a lot of you people, if you know me and my taste in music, but again from 1990, Obituary's Cause of Death. Alan West had left the band, and that man again, James Murphy, had joined. And as much as I love Slowly Rot, he added another level to Obituary that they didn't have at that time. This is just a perfect death metal album. It's got the ferocity and the evilness. I mean, John Tardy's vocals are just unworldly. They're just unbelievable. The lead guitar work from James Murphy is spectacular. The drumming, a lot of people said Donald Tardy, I had to think of his name then, Donald Tardy's drumming was a bit simplistic, but it's not. It is exactly what Trevor Perez's riffs need. It is just an absolute beast of an album. And, you know, not only is it my number 1 favourite album recorded at Morrisound Studios, it's right up there with my favourite death metal albums of all time. In fact, a few of these are. I could probably put all 10 in my 10 favourite death metal albums of all time. Obviously, not forgetting the Swedish scene and the late 80s, early 90s UK scene with the likes of Bolt Thrower and Benediction, and soon Dismember, obviously, from Sweden. But yeah, everything that you want in a death metal album is in this. It's got even a little bit of doominess, it's got that thrashiness, it's got the speed, it's got the just the evilness that you want. It's just a fantastic record. My number 1, Obituary, Cause of Death from 1990. Let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know what some of your favourite albums that were recorded at the famous Morrisound Studios. I would be very interested to hear. But as always, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch. It is always really appreciated. Please do get involved in the comments. That's what these videos are all about, to stir up a conversation about the things that we love about death metal. So yeah, please do comment. I'll be back in soon with another video. Until then, and before I forget, my other honourable mention, nearly forgot, Malevolent Creations, The 10 Commandments, a fantastic, solid, riffy death metal album, and one really that for me back in the day didn't quite get the praise it deserved. 91 this came out. It's kind of taken a bit of time to get its foot in the door, really, for me. But yeah, an absolute fantastic death metal record. And I did forget to mention earlier on, actually, before we go, that in 2025, Morrisound Studios was given the original site at Temple Terrace that I alluded to earlier when I went there was given an historical marker, and I'll insert a few pictures here, just to, I suppose, cement and recognise its importance to death metal, its importance to the Floridian death metal scene, which is, as we know, a huge big thing. So like I say, I will have inserted a few little pictures there so you can see that. I would like to go back now I've been before, now it's got the historical marker. It'd be quite nice to go and see that, wouldn't it? But if I ever do make it over to Florida again, I will certainly pay it a visit. But as I was saying earlier, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Always appreciated. I will see you again in another video very soon. Until then, bye for now.